Hello, and welcome to the seventh episode of Tech in Chicago. I'm Colin Keeley, and I interview Chicago's top founders and investors on the show. Today, I'm happy to welcome Katlin Smith, the founder of Simple Mills, to the show. Simple Mills makes baking mixes and crackers with simple, whole food ingredients. While working as a consultant, Caitlin discovered she had a gluten sensitivity and started experimenting with her almond flour baking mixes on the weekends. Shortly after launching her almond flour muffin mix, it became the best-selling muffin mix on Amazon. They're growing incredibly fast, and after just a few years, they're already in over 2,000 stores nationwide, including Whole Foods and Mariano's in Chicago. It's amazing what Caitlin has accomplished in such a short time. I think you guys will really enjoy hearing how she did it. Without further ado, here's Caitlin. We have Caitlin Smith of Simple Mills here today. Caitlin, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For the people that maybe haven't heard of Simple Mills before, can you describe it a little bit?
Yeah, so Simple Mills makes simple ingredient, real food baking mixes and crackers. So all of our products are made with fewer ingredients than what you would typically find on the shelf and also more wholesome ingredients. So things like almonds, coconut, sugar, things that you can pronounce and know what they are.
And how'd you come up with the idea?
I really, it was because I cleaned up my diet. I took out a lot of the processed food and a lot of the sugar and realized what a huge difference that makes. So for me, I had my joint pain went away. I had loads more energy. I stopped getting sick. You know, it's funny. It's these things that you just think are part of aging or part of life, or the solution is just to take a pill. And then you realize that if you change the way that you eat, that they don't have to be a part of your life. And I really wanted to change that for people.
And what were you doing before this?
So I was working at Deloitte Consulting as a strategy and operations consultant.
Wow, quite a shift.
Yeah, it was. A very good one, though. I mean, I loved my job at Deloitte. But once I became passionate about this, I really wanted to make a difference in the space.
So were you doing it while you're at Deloitte? You were building the first prototypes that way?
Yeah, so I was traveling 4 days a week. And then I would come home on the weekends and I would make hundreds of recipes, just trying to get to the right recipe for our first baking mixes. I would test it out on my friends and family and say, "Oh, is this good? Am I crazy that this tastes good?" With a food product, you have to make sure that it's really, really tasty, or nobody's going to eat it.
I'm sure it's brutal for everyone having to try all your food all the time.
Yeah, my poor roommates. Even still, I do a lot of the R&D for the company, and so just about any roommate that I've had in the past few years knows what an R&D day is for me. And they come home and I'm covered in ingredients, and the kitchen's a mess, but they have good food to eat. So there's that.
So in between Deloitte and Simple Mills, you went to business school. Did you enter business school with the idea for Simple Mills?
So I actually started. I started at Booth right after starting in our first store. I had been working on the concept for about a year, and we had just started selling the product when I started at Booth. And actually, the business really grew quite fast. We found out we were onto something. We became the best-selling muffin mixes on Amazon within a few months, and as a result of that, started raising money and actually went on a leave of absence from the school.
So
Yeah.
you never finished up there?
I haven't yet.
There's still time to go back.
There's still time.
And did you go through the New Venture Challenge there?
Yeah. The at NBC, and we actually co-won that year with another company.
Did you get some prize for it? You get some money, some seed funding?
Yeah. So we got as a product of being the number one prize winner, what have you. They do put money into your seed round.
How'd you come up with the name? I'm a big fan of the name. I know like Skinny Pop attributes a lot of their success to their great name. So how'd you get started with that?
I do think it's super important to have a strong name as a startup. I was actually just having this conversation with people last night, how lucky we got with a name like Simple Mills, because it really does evoke what the product and the brand is about without you even knowing what we do. Honestly, I'll just say we got lucky. I have no history in brand naming, and I didn't think up 100 different names. So yeah, all luck.
It's just Simple Mills from the start.
I actually wanted Simple Foods, but the domain name was $3,000, and Simple Mills was going for 15. So I went for the $15 one.
Fair enough. How'd you get in your first stores?
So first stores, probably first, I would even say 400, 500 stores. I was selling it in. As an entrepreneur, you have to be your salesperson, even if it's not what you like to do. I'm an introvert at heart, and so calling people on the phone that I don't know and who don't really want to hear from me is not my favorite thing to do, but it's something you have to do as an entrepreneur, and you have to be good at it. So it was really just calling up the individual stores saying, hey, I have this new product. It's an almond flour baking mix, and sending them samples and following up with them.
Are you still doing sales calls today?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the CEO of a CPG company, or really a CEO of any startup, you're really always the chief sales officer.
How'd you decide to start with baking mixes instead of like a ready-to-made thing?
I think it was really because I found opportunity in that space, and I knew how to do it. You have to start somewhere, or you'll never get started. And I didn't know how to do something like create crackers, which is what we just launched a couple weeks ago. I didn't have the resources to create crackers or figure out how to make them shelf stable, but I knew how to make baking mixes shelf stable. I knew how to test them. I knew how to get them into production. So it was a good starting point.
How'd you learn all that stuff?
I suppose Googling it. Yeah, teaching it to myself. Yeah,
And this is all while you're at Deloitte.
yeah.
So what are your main ingredients? You pride yourself on keeping to a few simple ingredients.
Yeah, so as an example, our vanilla cake mix. So most baking mixes, when you look at them, they would have like probably 20 different ingredients, 20 grams of sugar. Sugar would be the very first ingredient, and then it would be a lot of carb-based flours. So for our product, sugar is never our number one ingredient. So like our vanilla cake mix is almonds, coconut sugar, arrowroot powder, baking soda, sea salt, and coconut flour.
Okay.
Yeah. It's enough that you can actually remember the full ingredient list without looking at it.
Yeah, it's all pronounceable too.
Yeah.
So nuts are pretty expensive, right? How do your products compare to other products on the shelf?
So they do cost a little bit more, but what we found is that people will pay more for something that they really see the value in. So what we found is that a lot of consumers have actually left the baking mix category in general, because they're looking for lower sugar, lower carb alternatives, things that are made out of real food. And so they're not necessarily comparing us to another baking mix, but they're comparing us to either preparing something at home, or eating like vegetables or meats, eating things that are more nutrient dense.
So nuts are a large part of my diet. Do you have any idea why they're so expensive compared to other things?
I think compared to like like a rice flour or like a wheat flour, it just takes more resources to make a nut, because it is more nutrient dense. So it takes more nutrients from the soil, and yeah.
Okay. I just always wondered that.
I think it's the old adage that like you get what you pay for, and with nuts you're getting a lot more nutrition.
What have been your biggest challenges so far?
I think the challenges that you face as a business really change depending on the stage of the business. It's actually what I love about being an entrepreneur, is that around every corner is a new and different type of challenge. So in the early days, it was little things like that seem little now, like getting into stores, or figuring out the first recipes, or figuring out how to get things from here to there for really cheap. But today, I actually think that the more challenging part as an entrepreneur comes later in the process. It comes when you're managing and leading a team towards something that you're really passionate about, and yeah, it's really interesting how you learn how to motivate people, and get a team to work together and communicate.
How are you trying to improve at that?
So I think it's important to have some really good advisors. So people who can um, teach you the best ways to lead. And I think that it's also really important to get good candid feedback from your team. So you can't improve or be a good manager in a vacuum.
How have you found your advisors?
Really through networking. You come across them in all steps of the process. Probably my closest advisor, she and I met through one of our investors, and it was really a fortuitous meeting. It wasn't the reason why he introduced her, but we really kind of hit it off, and I realized that she had a real strength in this area, and she's been an advisor, a very close advisor to the business ever since.
How many stores are you in now?
We're in about 2,000 stores.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how are you acquiring new stores nowadays?
So it's a combination of our internal sales team, myself. We have a VP of sales as well as three other salespeople in the company. So we'll all go after accounts. I'll tell you that accounts that we can't go after or that we're struggling to go after, I'll go through and I'll LinkedIn the person responsible for the buying decision. I'll figure out a way to get in there. You just have to be scrappy and creative as an entrepreneur. And then the other thing that we use is we use a broker network, so they help us secure meetings with buyers and get our foot in the door.
What are some of the stores if people want to go out and buy Simple Mill stuff?
So if you're in Chicago, the best places are Whole Foods, Mariano's, Treasure Island, Plum Market. Outside of Chicago, we're in a number of stores around the country, including places like Wegmans, Raley's, Safeway. Actually going into Target in about a week. So, number of places you can find us. We've got a store locator on our website as well as you can purchase us on Amazon Prime.
So I don't know the food industry super well. How big is direct to consumer, like selling on Amazon or selling from your website?
So, selling from our website doesn't account for a huge part of our business, but other online channels are really terrific, and they're growing at a rapid pace for natural food companies. Um, I think that I think these areas will continue to grow as more people are looking for convenient options for purchasing their food and groceries.
What's your most popular product?
Well, up until 3 weeks ago when we launched the crackers, it was our pancake and waffle mix. But our new first, number one, actually is our sea salt crackers.
So how'd you decide to go with crackers for your next product?
So I wanted to go into a category that was a lot more convenient than baking mixes. I wanted to make it easier and easier for people to eat simple, real food. And I found that crackers was a category where it was loaded with a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of stuff you can't pronounce, and wanted to really improve upon that.
So the crackers are almond based?
They are, yeah. They're based in actually a nut and seed flour blend. So it's almonds, sunflower seeds, and flax seeds, and they taste phenomenal. I mean, they have that traditional cracker crunch. I actually took them to a party, didn't tell anybody what they were, and one of my friends was sitting down next to me. She was like, "Have you tried these crackers? They are so good." It's like I'm a little familiar with them.
What was that process like? How long does it take to come up with idea for crackers and then get it to production?
It's not an easy process. It takes a lot of detail orientation from everybody on the team. So you start by making benchtop samples in your kitchen and rolling out the dough, trying to figure out how different things work together, and then after that, you take it to the line. You see how it does on the line. You tweak the recipe some, and then you repeat the process. And then you tweak the recipe some, and then you repeat the process. And then once you actually have a product, you get it photographed, you design packaging for it, you start selling it into accounts, and then you launch the product in stores.
And what was the timeline? How long did that take in total?
So that actually took us only 6 months, which is shockingly fast. A product like that, if you were at like a Kraft or a Mondelez, would probably take 2 years.
And just a more nimble, smaller team? Is that why you attribute it 6 months instead of 2 years?
Smaller, nimble team, and also just a team that really believes in what we're doing. I think when people believe in what they're doing and believe in the importance of the work that they're doing, it changes what they're able to accomplish.
What's your team look like now?
So we have 13 people now. And it's pretty evenly split actually between sales, marketing, and ops and finance. Um, so we've got just a really neat leadership team, people who have been in the industry for a good amount of time and really understand how things work, have great connections in the space. So that way our time to market's really shortened. I find that bringing experience on your team really accelerates your time to market. But you also want to make sure that you're still getting people who are ready to be scrappy and get their hands dirty and do what it takes to make a startup successful.
How have you found hiring in Chicago? Are you finding everyone you need?
Yeah, it's been terrific actually. A lot of food companies will hire people outside of their home city and have remote parts of their team. We actually have 100% of our non-sales team based here in Chicago. And I found, well, our team has found the vast majority of our team through LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What would you say Chicago does well as the tech scene?
I think we have a really, how do I say this? Just there's a really strong camaraderie in Chicago, a willingness to help other people, and approachability. I find that it's really easy to get introduced to people, and when you meet people, they're willing to talk. I don't get the sense that it's like that everywhere, like in New York or SF.
And what do you think we could improve on?
I think continuing to attract companies here. I think it's a little underrated as a home for startups. It's really affordable. You can get terrific talent and you can network really well. So it's a great place to be. Just need more people here.
What's been the best advice you've received?
That success is a couple small disciplines practiced every day. And failure is just a couple errors in judgment practiced every day. So it's really important just to take the discipline to do the things that you should be doing and avoid doing the things that you shouldn't be doing. Hold your tongue when you shouldn't say things, or make that cold call even when you don't feel like it, because those tiny itty bitty things that you don't think matter a whole lot when added up.
That's great advice. Do you have any founders or companies you look up to?
Yeah, I think one that I personally have admired is Annie's and their CEO John Foraker. So John grew Annie's from a small size to a $200 million company, which then he sold but continues to run. And I think what they've done is really neat. Annie's has really cleaned up the grocery aisle. They've taken those products that you were traditionally familiar with, so like Kraft macaroni and cheese, and they've taken out a lot of the processed food and processed ingredients in there to create something that's cleaner.
Do you have any favorite books?
Yeah, so I've got two that I'm reading right now that I've been really enjoying. So one of them is called Daring Greatly, and it's about vulnerability and the way that you communicate with people, whether it is the people that you're working with or your spouse or your friends. And the other one that I'm reading right now, which I think is also really good, is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's about the fallacies that you tend to create in your head about, oh, this is what got me here, when in fact, sometimes you're successful in spite of some of your behaviors. And so it talks about some of those behaviors to stop.
What's the vision for the long term? What's next for Simple Mills?
So I started Simple Mills because I wanted to make it easier for people to eat simple ingredient, real food in a delicious manner. And I think there's opportunities for that across the grocery store. So not just in the baking mix aisle, not just in the cracker aisle. I really want to see us be the brand that represents simple, real food.
Big thank you to Caitlin for coming on the show. After the show, I was able to try some of her new crackers, and they're really fantastic. If you're in Chicago, definitely stop by Whole Foods or Mariano's and check them out. Or if you're like me and like having everything sent to your door, go to the show notes on techinchicago.co and find the Amazon links to the crackers and baking mixes. As always, if you guys have any feedback or guests you'd like to hear from on the show, I'm happy to chat. Please reach out at Tech in Chicago on Twitter. Support for Tech in Chicago comes from Geneva Denim. They're a Chicago-based jean company and makers of the world's most comfortable jeans. If you're like me and hate wearing pretty much anything other than sweatpants, you have to get a pair of these. Check them out at genevadenim.com. See you next week.